Months after my wife passed away, I took her broken glasses to be repaired. They were the last thing she wore every day, the only keepsake I had left. But when the technician examined them, his hands started trembling. He didn't give them back. Instead, he locked the door, pulled me into the back room, and said something that shattered everything. "Check her will immediately, before you're the next one in the grave." Then he showed me what was hidden inside the frames. I nearly collapsed when I saw the face on that screen. I'm deeply grateful you're here listening to this. Before we begin, drop a comment below and let me know, where are you tuning in from right now? Your city, your country. I'd love to connect with you. Also, a quick note. This account blends some fictional elements for storytelling and reflection purposes. Any similarity to actual names or places is entirely unintended, but the lessons I'm sharing, those are worth your time. 5 months had passed since I lost Catherine, but her reading glasses still sat on the corner of her desk, right where she'd left them that morning. I'd walked past that desk every day, unable to touch anything. Her favorite pen, the half-finished crossword puzzle, the small jade plant she'd kept alive for 12 years. That afternoon, something shifted. Maybe it was the way the autumn light came through the window, the same way it used to catch her silver hair when she worked. I finally opened the desk drawer. The glasses were tucked beneath a stack of garden catalogs. The moment I picked them up, the left hinge gave way, and the frame split in two. I sat there holding both pieces, feeling like I'd broken the last physical piece of her I had left. Catherine had worn these glasses every single day. She was religious about it, never left the house without them. I remembered how she'd push them up her nose when she was concentrating, how she'd take them off and clean them obsessively with that little blue cloth she kept in her pocket. I couldn't just throw them away. I wouldn't. Ballard Avenue was quiet for a weekday. The rain had let up, leaving that clean, mineral smell that only comes after a Seattle downfall. I parked in front of Porter's Optical, a small shop, tucked between a Thai restaurant and a vintage bookstore. Catherine and I used to walk this street every Saturday morning. Daniel Porter had been a friend for over 20 years. We'd met on a commercial renovation project back in 2004. When he opened his optical shop a decade ago, Catherine and I had sent flowers. After she passed, he'd come to the funeral. Shaken my hand, told me to call if I needed anything. The bell above the door chimed when I walked in. Daniel looked up from behind the counter. "James." He set down the frame he'd been adjusting. "It's good to see you." I set the broken glasses on the counter between us. His expression shifted the moment he saw them. Not surprise, something closer to concern. He picked them up carefully, turning them over in his hands. He pulled a jeweler's loupe from his drawer and bent over the frame, studying the right temple. Then he stopped moving entirely. When he finally straightened up, he didn't look at me right away. He walked to the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and pulled the shade down over the glass. My stomach tightened. "Daniel, what's wrong?" He gestured toward the back room. "James, I think you need to see something, and I think you need to sit down first." I followed him past the display cases into a cluttered workshop. He cleared a space on the desk, set the glasses down under a bright lamp, and opened his laptop. He plugged a small cable into something I hadn't even noticed. A tiny port hidden along the inner arm of the frame. A file directory appeared on his screen. 3 video files, 2 audio files. All dated from April, the month Catherine passed. Daniel clicked on the first video. The footage was shaky at first, then stabilized. It took me a moment to recognize what I was seeing. Our kitchen. I could see the edge of the refrigerator, the bowl of fruit Catherine always kept on the island, the window over the sink. Then Ryan walked into frame. My son. My only son. 39 years old, a civil attorney with a corner office downtown. He was wearing the navy suit I'd bought him for his birthday last year. He moved with purpose. No hesitation. He opened the cabinet where Catherine kept her vitamins and pulled out the large bottle. From his pocket, he took out a small plastic bag. white pills inside. He unscrewed the vitamin bottle, poured the white pills in, shook it, put it back exactly where it had been. The whole thing took less than 30 seconds. Daniel's voice was quiet beside me. There's more. But I couldn't look away from the screen. Ryan was washing his hands at the sink, now drying them carefully on the dish towel. Then he walked out of frame. I heard the front door close. The timestamp in the corner read, April 14th, 7:15 a.m. Catherine collapsed at 2:47 a.m. on April 15th. I called 911. The paramedics said it looked like a stroke. She was gone before we reached the hospital. Daniel let the silence stretch. Then he said, his voice heavy with both anger and sorrow. James, Catherine came to me 3 weeks before she passed. She asked me to install this camera. She said she needed proof of something, but she wouldn't tell me what. She made me promise not to tell you unless something happened to her. He paused, his hand hovering over the mouse. See, I didn't know what she'd recorded until just now. But I know this checked the will immediately. Because if he did this to her, you're next. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't look away from the frozen image on the screen. My son's hand holding that plastic bag, pouring those pills into my wife's vitamin bottle. The glasses were still on the desk between us. I picked them up with shaking hands, turning them over, finally seeing what I'd missed. The tiny lens, the hidden port, the weight of everything Catherine had carried alone. She'd known, for weeks she'd known, and she'd left me this. Daniel clicked to the next video file, and I realized I'd been living in a lie for 5 months. Daniel didn't ask if I wanted to keep watching. He just moved the cursor to the second file and clicked. Maybe he knew that if he gave me a choice, I'd walk out of that shop and spend the rest of my life pretending I'd never seen the first video. But I couldn't leave. Not now. The screen flickered, and there was our kitchen again. Later the same morning, judging by the light coming through the window. Catherine's glasses were on the counter, now angled toward the stove. I could see her moving in and out of frame, making her usual breakfast. Oatmeal with blueberries, the same thing she'd eaten every morning for 30 years. Ryan appeared in the doorway. He was still in that navy suit, but his tie was loosened now. He leaned against the counter, watching her. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge him, just kept stirring her oatmeal. He said something I couldn't hear. Catherine's shoulders stiffened, but she still didn't look at him. After a moment, Ryan pushed off the counter and left. The video jumped forward, timestamp 9:30 that night. The kitchen was dark, except for the light over the sink. The glasses were in a different position, now facing the breakfast nook, where Catherine liked to sit with her tea before bed. I recognized the blue mug. She always used the one with the chipped handle she refused to replace. Ryan walked into frame again. This time he was on his phone, pacing. His voice came through clearly. Catherine must have been sitting close enough to the glasses for the microphone to pick it up. "It's done," he said. "I used the amount we discussed." A woman's voice responded tinny through the phone speaker. "Jessica." I'd recognize my daughter-in-law's voice anywhere, that slight southern accent she'd never quite lost. "Are you sure it won't leave traces?" she asked. Her voice was tight, anxious. Ryan stopped pacing. "It breaks down in the body. Looks exactly like cardiac arrest. The ER won't even test for it unless they have reason to suspect something. And why would they? She's 62, has high blood pressure, takes medication. It'll look like a stroke. When? 24 to 48 hours. Maybe sooner, depending on how much she takes." He paused. "It'll be quick, Jess. She won't suffer." There was a long silence. Then Jessica said quietly, "This is really happening. This is the only way. You know that. The casino isn't going to wait forever, and my name is on those debts too now. Once she's gone, we use the life insurance to clear everything, and we're free." "What about your father?" Ryan's laugh was cold. "He'll be devastated. Probably won't even think straight for months. I'll handle the estate, make sure everything's in order. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him." The call ended. Ryan stood there for a moment staring at his phone. Then he walked out of frame. The kitchen was empty again. Just Catherine's blue mug on the table, steam rising from the tea she'd never finish. I couldn't feel my hands. Couldn't feel anything, really. It was like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just a shell sitting in that chair. Daniel reached over and paused the video. "There's one more," he said quietly. "You don't have to watch it." But I did. I had to see. He clicked the third file. Timestamp April 15th, 2:47 a.m. The kitchen light was on. Catherine's glasses were on the counter again, angled toward the table. I could see her sitting in the breakfast nook, her back to the camera. She was wearing her blue robe, the one I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She stood up, reaching for something on the counter. Her hand missed, grabbed at the air. Then she went down. I watched her collapse the way you watch a car accident in slow motion. Knowing what's about to happen, unable to look away, unable to stop it. She fell hard, her head hitting the edge of the table before she crumpled onto the tile floor. And then Ryan was there. He must have been in the hallway. He walked into frame, looked down at her, and checked his watch. He didn't kneel, didn't call out, didn't touch her. He just stood there watching his mother die on the kitchen floor, glancing at his watch every few minutes, like he was timing something. I counted. 12 minutes. 12 minutes of watching her lie there, not moving, barely breathing. 12 minutes of making sure. Finally, he pulled out his phone and dialed. His voice when he spoke was frantic, desperate. An Oscar-worthy performance. 911. "My mother. She's collapsed. I don't know what happened. Please, you have to send someone." The video ended. I sat there staring at the black screen. Daniel didn't say anything. What could he say? My son. My only son. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to tie a tie. The man I'd put through law school, celebrated with, at his wedding, bragged about to my friends. That man had watched his own mother take her last breaths and checked his watch to make sure she was really gone. Daniel's hand moved over the keyboard, then stopped. He pointed to something at the bottom of the screen. Another file. There's a voice memo here," he said. His voice was careful, gentle. "Recorded at 11:47 p.m. on April 14th, 3 hours before she collapsed." He looked at me. "Do you want to hear it?" I couldn't speak, could barely nod. Daniel clicked the file, and Catherine's voice filled the small room. I wasn't ready to hear her voice again. 5 months of silence, of walking past her empty chair at breakfast, of reaching for the phone before remembering she was gone. 5 months of learning how to live in a house that still smelled like her lavender hand soap. And now, here she was, speaking to me from 3 hours before she collapsed on that kitchen floor. James. Just my name. But the way she said it, soft, aching, full of something I couldn't name, made my chest tighten. Daniel sat beside me in the back room of his shop, his hand resting on the edge of the desk. He'd already seen the first video. Ryan pouring those white pills into Catherine's vitamin bottle. Now we were listening to the audio file time-stamped April 14th, 11:47 p.m., the last thing my wife recorded before she was gone. "If you're hearing this," Catherine's voice continued, trembling slightly, "then I'm not there anymore. And I'm so sorry, my love." I gripped the armrest of the chair. My knuckles turned white. "I need you to listen carefully, because I don't have much time. There's a safe deposit box at Pacific Northwest Bank, downtown branch. Box number 447. The key is in my desk, bottom drawer inside the blue envelope beneath my gardening catalogs. You need to go there. You need to open it." I glanced at Daniel. He was staring at the laptop screen, his jaw tight. "Inside that box, you'll find a letter. 8 pages. I wrote down everything. Every detail, every date, every piece of evidence I gathered. I couldn't say it all out loud, but I wrote it down for you." She paused, and I could hear the faint sound of rain against a window in the background. There's also a new will in that box. I met with Helen Patterson 2 days ago. Patterson and Marks, Pioneer Square. She notarized it. 95% of our estate goes to the Family Justice Foundation. Ryan gets $100,000. That's it. My breath caught. 100,000. Out of 2 million. He doesn't know about the new will, James. He thinks the old one is still in effect. He thinks he's going to inherit over $1 million when I'm gone. But he won't. Helen has the original in her office safe. Catherine's voice dropped lower, and I leaned closer to the speaker. I need you to promise me something. Promise me you won't confront him alone. Promise me you'll go to the bank first, read my letter, and then call someone. A lawyer, the police, anyone. Just don't face him by yourself, please. I closed my eyes. I love you, James. I've loved you since the day you spilled coffee on me at the university library and apologized 5 times in under a minute. I've loved you through 38 years of marriage. I love you now, even if I'm not there to say it anymore. Her voice wavered, and I heard her inhale sharply like she was trying not to cry. I wanted to tell you on our anniversary, November 3rd. I had it all planned. I was going to take you to that little restaurant on the waterfront, and after dinner I was going to show you everything. The evidence. The letter. The plan to protect you. I thought I had time. The recording went quiet for a moment. I was wrong. I thought I could handle this alone. I thought I could gather enough proof, confront him privately, and fix it before you ever had to know. But I waited too long, and now, she trailed off. Now I'm recording this at almost midnight, and I'm terrified. I'm terrified he knows I've been watching him. I'm terrified he's going to act faster than I thought. And I'm terrified that by the time you hear this, it'll be too late for me. My chest felt like it was caving in. The glasses I'm wearing right now, the ones you're probably holding if you're listening to this, they have a hidden camera. Daniel Porter helped me install it in March. He's a good friend, James. You can trust him. Check the videos. You'll see. She paused again, and when she spoke next, her voice was barely above a whisper. Amba Box 447. Blue envelope in my desk. Helen Patterson, Pioneer Square. Read my letter. It has everything you need. And James, please be careful, please. Another silence, longer this time. I'm sorry I carried this alone. I just wanted you to sleep peacefully for a few more nights. I wanted to protect you from the weight of it. But I see now, I should have trusted you. I should have told you the moment I knew. Her voice broke completely. Forgive me, my love. Forgive my silence. The recording ended with a soft click. The room was utterly still. Daniel's computer hummed quietly. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of traffic on Ballard Avenue, but inside that little back room, there was only silence and the echo of Catherine's voice. Daniel finally spoke, his tone careful. James, we need to call someone. A lawyer, the police. Someone who can help. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because all I could think about was that blue envelope, the safe deposit box, the letter Catherine had written knowing she might not live to see me read it. She'd known. For weeks she'd known our son was planning to harm her, and she'd faced it alone because she didn't want to break my heart. Daniel stood and pulled his phone from his pocket. I'm calling Margaret Thornton. She's a criminal defense attorney. Elder law, too. She'll know what to do. He dialed. I heard the phone ring once, twice. Then a woman's voice answered. This is Margaret Thornton. Daniel glanced at me, then spoke into the phone. Margaret, it's Daniel Porter. I have a client here who needs your help immediately. His wife passed 5 months ago. They said it was a stroke, but we just found evidence that suggests it wasn't natural. And we think his son is planning to harm him next. There was a pause on the other end. Bring him to my office, Margaret said. Now. Margaret Thornton's office was nothing like I expected. No mahogany desk, no wall of leather-bound law books, No dramatic floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Just a modest space on the 7th floor of a building in downtown Seattle, with practical furniture and a coffee maker that looked like it had seen better days. She was exactly what Daniel had promised when he'd handed me her card in the parking lot outside his shop, sharp, experienced, and someone who wouldn't waste my time with platitudes. That had been 2 hours ago. 2 hours of me sitting in my car, hands shaking too hard to turn the key, trying to figure out what to do next. 2 hours of staring at my phone, knowing I should call Ryan, knowing I absolutely could not. Finally, I'd called the number on the card. Margaret had answered on the second ring and told me to come immediately. Now she sat across from me, 52 years old, with steel gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Reading glasses perched on her nose as she watched the videos on Daniel's laptop for the 3rd time. I'd driven back to get it after she'd asked to see the evidence herself. She didn't react the way Daniel had. No sharp intake of breath, no hand over her mouth. She just watched, made notes on a yellow legal pad, and occasionally paused to replay a section. When Catherine's voice memo ended, Margaret removed her glasses and set them on the desk between us. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Have you confronted your son about any of this? Have you called him, texted him, left any indication that you know?" "No. I came straight here after leaving Daniel's shop." "Good." She tapped her pen against the legal pad. "That decision may have saved your life." The words landed like a physical blow. "Your son is a civil attorney." She continued, her tone matter of fact. "He understands the legal system. He knows how evidence works, how investigations proceed, how to cover his tracks. The moment he knows you have this footage, this recording, he will move to destroy any remaining evidence and escalate his timeline for you." "Escalate his timeline," I repeated slowly. I mean if he thinks you're a threat, he'll act faster than he planned. Your wife gave you a tremendous gift with this evidence, but it's also put you in immediate danger." She flipped to a fresh page on her legal pad. "Shakis, here's what we're going to do. 6 steps. We follow them exactly, we don't deviate, and we don't tell anyone, including your son, what we're doing until we have everything locked down. Understood?" I nodded again. Step 1. You do not confront Ryan. You don't ask him about the money, about Jessica's debt, about the videos. Nothing. If he calls you, you keep the conversation light. If he wants to meet, you're busy. If he pushes you, have the flu. Whatever it takes to buy us time without raising suspicion. She wrote, "No contact, natural excuses," in sharp capital letters. Step 2. We petition for an exhumation of your wife's body. Your wife mentioned potassium chloride in her recording. That's the substance Ryan and Jessica discussed. It's commonly used in medical settings, mimics heart attack symptoms, and most importantly, it does leave traces in tissue if we know to look for it. Heart, muscle, liver, kidneys. A good forensic pathologist can find it even months later. My stomach turned. The thought of Catherine's grave being opened, her body being examined like evidence. "I know," Margaret said quietly, reading my expression. "But it's the only way to prove this wasn't a natural passing. Without that proof, everything else is circumstantial." She continued writing. Step 3. We hire a forensic accountant to trace every penny of that $680,000. Where it went, when, how. Bank records, wire transfers, cash withdrawals. We build an airtight paper trail showing systematic embezzlement over 18 months. Step 4. We verify the new will with Helen Patterson. I'll contact her directly, attorney to attorney. We'll confirm it's properly executed, legally binding, and that Ryan has no knowledge of its existence. Step 5. From this moment forward, you record every interaction with your son. Washington is a one-party consent state, which means you can legally record any conversation you're part of without the other person's knowledge. If Ryan calls you, record it. If he shows up at your house, your phone is recording in your pocket. Everything. Margaret looked up from her notes. Step 6, and this is crucial. You do not sign anything Ryan puts in front of you. Power of attorney, financial documents, anything. If he asks you to sign something, you tell him you want your own lawyer to review it first. If he pushes you, cite me. Tell him I'm helping you organize Catherine's estate. Use me as a buffer. She set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. These 6 steps give us a foundation. But Mr. Mitchell, I need you to understand something. I'm an elder law attorney with criminal defense experience. I can help you navigate this, protect your assets, and build a case. But what your son did to your wife, that's homicide. We need law enforcement involved. The word hung in the air between us. Homicide. My son had committed homicide. I have a contact at Seattle PD, Margaret continued. Detective Laura Hayes, Homicide Division. She's smart, thorough, and she doesn't let cases go. But before I call her, I need your permission. Once we bring law enforcement in, there's no going back. This becomes an official investigation. Your son will likely be arrested. This will be public. Your life will never be the same. I thought about Catherine's voice on that recording. The way she'd apologized for keeping secrets. The way she'd warned me I was next. I thought about Ryan standing in our kitchen, watching his mother take her last breaths, checking his watch. Call her, I said. Call Detective Hayes. Margaret picked up her phone, but before she dialed, she looked at me one more time. James, your son, is a civil attorney. He knows how to manipulate the system, how to make himself look sympathetic, how to cast doubt. We need to be smarter than him, faster than him, and we need to be absolutely certain of every move we make. She pressed a number on speed dial. And we need Detective Laura Hayes from Seattle PD Homicide to make sure he doesn't get away with this. The phone rang once, twice. Then a woman's voice answered, and Margaret said something I'll never forget. Laura, I have a client whose son poisoned his mother and is planning to do the same to him. We have video evidence. How fast can you get to my office? I didn't sleep Tuesday night. Just stared at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the house, settling every car that passed, wondering if one of them would slow down and stop. Margaret had said Detective Hayes would need 24 hours to review the evidence. 24 hours felt like an eternity when you knew your own son was planning to make your passing look like grief-driven despair. Wednesday morning, I forced myself through the motions of normalcy. Coffee, shower, get dressed. Who doesn't know his only child wants him gone. The note was waiting when I walked out to my car. A single piece of paper folded once tucked under the driver's side windshield wiper. My hands were shaking before I even opened it. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Neat, feminine, urgent. He knows, run. That was it. 4 words. No signature, no explanation. I looked around the parking area. My neighborhood was quiet at 8 in the morning. Most people already at work, a few retirees walking dogs in the distance. No one paying attention to me. But someone had been here. Someone knew what Ryan was planning. Someone was trying to help me, or someone was trying to scare me into making a mistake. I got in the car, locked the doors, and sat there with the note in my lap, my heart hammering. Margaret's voice echoed from yesterday, your son will move to destroy evidence and escalate his timeline. If he knows I have the footage. I drove home faster than I should have, nearly running a red light on Ballard Avenue. Inside, I went straight to my home office and pulled out the filing cabinet, where Catherine and I had always kept important documents. I found it in the life insurance folder tucked behind our legitimate policies. A policy I'd never seen before. Pacific Mutual Life Insurance, $1.5 million. Issue date March 15, 2024. Insured James Robert Mitchell. Beneficiary Ryan Thomas Mitchell. My signature at the bottom. Except I'd never signed this. Never even heard of Pacific Mutual. The signature was close, someone had practiced. But the capital M in Mitchell was wrong. Too loopy. I always made mine angular a habit from years of architectural drafting. My phone rang and I nearly dropped the policy. Ryan's name on the screen. I answered on the fourth ring, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, buddy." "Dad. Finally. I've been trying to reach you since yesterday. Sorry, I've been busy, dealing with some of your mom's things." A pause. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I think it's time we get your affairs in order too. Power of attorney making sure I can access accounts if something happens. You're 64 now, Dad. We need to think about these things." My grip tightened on the phone. He was good. His voice was concerned, caring. The perfect, dutiful son. "I appreciate that, Ryan, but I'm not ready to think about that yet." "Dad, it's not about being ready. It's about being prepared. Mom's passing showed us how quickly things can happen. I don't want to be scrambling if you have a health emergency. I'll think about it. I'm coming over tonight. We'll go through the paperwork together. Just a few signatures." "Tonight's not good. Dad." His tone shifted slightly. Harder. "Mom would want you to do this. She'd want you to trust me. I'm your only son. Who else is going to take care of things if something happens to you?" There it was. The guilt. The manipulation. The same tactics he'd probably used on Catherine. I said, "I'll think about it, Ryan." "Fine, but I'm stopping by anyway. Around 7. We need to talk." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at the fake insurance policy. I called Margaret. She answered immediately. "James, what's wrong?" "There was a note on my car this morning. He knows. Run." And I found a life insurance policy in my files. 1.5 million, my forged signature Ryan as beneficiary. And he just called, says he's coming tonight to get me to sign power of attorney documents. Silence. Then, "Get out of your house right now. Don't pack anything, don't wait. Drive to a hotel, pay cash, use a fake name if you have to. Turn off location services on your phone. Do not tell anyone where you're going, not even me. Margaret." James, listen to me. If Ryan is pushing this hard, this fast, it means he knows you're on to him. That note is from someone trying to warn you. We don't have 24 hours anymore. We might not even have 24 minutes. Get out. Now. I grabbed my wallet and keys, leaving the fake policy on my desk. As I headed for the door, I pulled up my security camera app. The one we'd installed last year after break-ins in the neighborhood. The live feed showed my front porch. Empty. Then I scrolled back through the recorded footage from the past hour. My blood ran cold. Ryan had been there. 30 minutes ago, while I was still in my office. He'd walked up to the front door, tried the handle. Locked, thank God. Then stood there for almost 5 minutes, peering through the living room window. Finally, he'd pulled out his phone and typed something. Then walked back to his car. I switched to the street view camera and zoomed in on his phone screen in the recording. The angle was just right to catch what he'd typed. A text message. "He's not home. We need to move faster." I watched him send it. Watched him look back at my house one more time. Watched him drive away. My son had come to my house to find me, to corner me, to make me sign documents that would give him access to everything. Or maybe to do something worse. I grabbed my jacket and ran for my car, the warning note still crumpled in my pocket. He knows, run. And for the first time since finding Catherine's glasses, I did exactly that. I ran. I'd spent Wednesday night in a budget motel off Highway 99 paid cash, under the name Robert Anderson, and kept my phone turned off except to check messages every hour. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but it had a deadbolt and a view of the parking lot, and that was all I needed. I didn't sleep, just watched car headlights sweep across the ceiling, and thought about Ryan standing on my porch, peering through my living room window, texting someone that they needed to move faster. Thursday morning, Margaret had sent a single encrypted message. 8 a.m. My office. Bring nothing. Now I sat in that same chair across from her desk, and this time we weren't alone. Thomas Reed looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd spent 40 years following money trails that people desperately wanted hidden. 61 years old, gray suit, reading glasses on a chain, and a leather briefcase that had seen better decades. He set the briefcase on Margaret's desk and pulled out a report thick enough to be a novel. Now 47 pages, he said. But I can summarize if you'd prefer the version that won't make your head spin. Summarize? Margaret said. We don't have time for the full audit. Thomas flipped to a page marked with a yellow tab, a spreadsheet covered in numbers, dates, and highlighted transactions. Your family trust was established in 2006. Original funding was $1.8 million. By January 2023, it had grown to $2.4 million. He turned the page. That's when the withdrawals started. I leaned forward, studying the spreadsheet. Rows and rows of transactions, each one highlighted in yellow. 23 withdrawals over 18 months. Thomas continued. Small enough to avoid triggering bank alerts. 20,000 here. 40,000 there. Always under 50,000 per transaction, always spaced at least 3 weeks apart. Textbook embezzlement strategy. He ran his finger down the column. I've documented every single one. Wire transfers to 3 different accounts. 2 in Ryan's name, 1 joint account with Jessica Mitchell. My hands were flat on Margaret's desk, pressing down hard enough that my knuckles went white. The current balance of the trust is $1.72 million. Your son embezzled $680,000 over a year and a half. He did it slowly, carefully, and he would have gotten away with it if your wife hadn't been watching. She knew, I said quietly. In her recording, she said she'd been tracking it since March. To March of this year, Thomas confirmed. That's when the withdrawals got larger, more frequent. He was getting desperate. Margaret leaned back. Desperate for what? Where did the money go? Thomas flipped to another tabbed section. This one had photographs, screenshots of casino statements, credit reports, collection notices. Jessica Mitchell has a gambling problem. High-stakes poker and blackjack at Emerald Bay Casino. She currently owes the casino $920,000. The number hit me like a fist to the gut. The debt is held by Pacific Holdings LLC, a shell corporation run by people you don't want to owe money to. The kind who don't take you to court when you don't pay. They handle collection differently. How differently? I asked. Thomas didn't sugarcoat it. Broken bones first, then escalates from there. Jessica took out the loans starting in early 2022. By January 2023, she couldn't make the interest payments. The casino gave her a deadline, December 31st, 2024. Pay in full or face consequences. So Ryan started stealing from the trust, Margaret said. He started stealing, Thomas confirmed. But $680,000 doesn't cover $920,000. He was still short by $240,000. The life insurance, I said. Catherine's life insurance, Thomas nodded. Your wife had a $500,000 policy through her employer. Ryan was the secondary beneficiary after you. If something happened to her, and then something happened to you, shortly after he'd have access to that payout, plus whatever remained in the trust, plus your personal assets. More than enough to clear Jessica's debt and start overs. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Ryan had been planning this for over a year. And when stealing wasn't enough, he'd decided to make sure Catherine and I wouldn't be around to notice the missing money. There's one more thing, Thomas said. He pulled out his phone. I did some additional research into Jessica's gambling addiction. She's been attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings for about 8 months. I found her sponsor. Woman named Allison Ward, 38, works as a paralegal downtown. She's willing to talk to you. Margaret straightened. Willing to testify? Potentially. She's scared, but she's also angry about what Ryan convinced Jessica to do. I gave her your number. She said she'd reach out directly. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I turned it back on during the drive to Margaret's office. Unknown number. I opened it. Mr. Mitchell, this is Allison Ward. I was Jessica's sponsor at GA. I left that note on your car Wednesday morning. Jessica told me things she shouldn't have. Ryan hired someone to tamper with your car brakes, make it look like an accident. She was supposed to keep quiet, but she broke down in our last meeting. Said she couldn't live with another person's life on her conscience. You need protection immediately. The man Ryan hired is a professional. His name is Marcus Cole. Please be careful. I read the message twice, then handed the phone to Margaret. Her expression went cold. Your car. Where is it? Still at my house. I took a rideshare to the motel. Don't go near it. Margaret was already dialing. Laura, we have a new problem. The son hired someone to cut the brake lines. We need the car impounded and examined, and we need protection on my client right now. Thomas began packing up his report, but he paused and looked at me. Mr. Mitchell, I've been doing this work for 30 years. I've seen people steal from their businesses, their partners, their parents. But I've never seen someone steal from their family and then systematically plan to end their lives to cover it up. Your son isn't just a thief. He's something much worse. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because I was thinking about Catherine's voice on that recording about how she'd said Ryan was desperate. She'd been right. And desperate people don't stop until they get what they need, or until someone stops them. Volunteer Park in the afternoon was the kind of peaceful that felt wrong when your son was planning to tamper with your brakes. Families walked dogs. Joggers passed by with their headphones in. A group of teenagers skateboarded near the conservatory. I sat at an outside table at the small cafe near the water tower, nursing a coffee I hadn't touched, watching every person who walked up the path. Margaret had insisted I take a rideshare here and sit where I could see all the approaches. She arrived 10 minutes late, scanning the area. 38 years old, dressed in business casual, like she'd come straight from work. Dark hair, pulled back minimal makeup, and the kind of tired eyes that came from carrying other people's secrets. She carried a brown leather messenger bag. When she spotted me, she hesitated, then walked over and sat down without shaking hands. Mr. Mitchell, thank you for meeting me. She glanced around again. I shouldn't be here. If Ryan finds out I talked to you, or if Jessica finds out I warned you, they won't, I promise. Allison didn't look convinced, but she opened her messenger bag and pulled out a small USB drive, setting it on the table between us. Jessica came to her first Gamblers Anonymous meeting 8 months ago. She'd hit rock bottom, $920,000 in debt to people who don't forgive debts. She was terrified. That's when I became her sponsor. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup I'd bought for her. So, 3 weeks ago, she broke down completely. Said she couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't live with what Ryan was planning. She told you about my wife. Allison nodded. She told me Ryan had used something to make it look like your wife had a stroke. Said he'd been planning it for months. And then she told me about you. My coffee cup was cold in my hands. She said Ryan had hired someone. A professional. Someone who specializes in making problems disappear. She gave me a name, Marcus Cole. 45 years old, has a record in Oregon. He's what they call a cleaner. Someone who handles situations that need to look like accidents. How much did Ryan pay him? $50,000, half up front, half when the job is done. $50,000 to end my life. Jessica told me the plan. Allison continued. Marcus was supposed to cut your brake lines, make it look like mechanical failure. Ryan knew your routine, that you drive Highway 99 every morning. Lots of traffic, steep grades, plenty of opportunities for a crash. She pushed the USB drive closer to me. I couldn't let it happen. I've been a sponsor for 3 years, worked with dozens of people trying to rebuild their lives. But I've never had someone confess to conspiracy and taking a life. I couldn't go to the police directly. Jessica would know it was me. But I couldn't just do nothing. So you left the warning note. I left the note, and I did something else. She tapped the USB drive. 3 weeks ago, Jessica told me Ryan and Marcus were meeting at a bar in Fremont to finalize the details. I went too. Sat in the back with my phone recording. I got the whole conversation. My hand closed around the USB drive. You need to understand something. These aren't good people. Marcus Cole isn't some amateur. He's done this before. And Ryan talked about you the way someone talks about a business transaction. No emotion, no hesitation, just logistics. Can I listen to it? Allison pulled out her phone and a small portable speaker from her bag. I made a copy. Better you hear it now so you know what you're dealing with. She plugged in the speaker and pressed play. The audio quality was decent despite the background noise. Then Ryan's voice cut through. So we're clear on the approach? A deeper voice responded. Marcus. Brake lines. Cut them about 70%, leave enough that he can drive a few miles before they fail completely. Makes it look like gradual wear, not sabotage. Timeline. I can do it in under 5 minutes if I have access to the vehicle. He parks in his driveway, usually gone for his morning walk around 7. More than enough time. Make it look like an accident. He's 64 drives Highway 99 every morning. Anyone investigates, they'll see an old man who didn't maintain his vehicle properly. Marcus's laugh was cold. Old man on a steep grade with no brakes. Clean as it gets. When's the timeline? Before Thanksgiving. I need access to his accounts by December. The casino deadline is December 31st. And if something happens before I can finish the job, then I'll handle it myself. But I'd prefer to stay clean. That's what I'm paying you for. A pause. Then Ryan's voice again, quieter, but still audible. Once both of them are gone, we're set for life. The trust, the life insurance, his personal assets. Everything. We clear Jessica's debt and we disappear for a while. Maybe Europe. The recording ended. I sat there staring at the speaker, unable to move. That was my son's voice. Planning my end the way someone might plan a vacation. Allison turned off the speaker and packed it away, giving me a moment. So Jessica is terrified, she finally said. She's hiding now. Motel 6 in Tacoma, room 214. Hasn't contacted Ryan in 2 days. He's been calling her non-stop. Will she testify? I don't know. She's scared of Ryan, scared of the casino, scared of going to prison. But she's also eaten up with guilt about your wife. Allison met my eyes. Mr. Mitchell, I left you that warning because I couldn't live with staying silent. I'm giving you this recording because you deserve to know exactly what your son is capable of. But if you use this, Jessica might run. And if Ryan finds out she talked or that I helped you, I picked up the USB drive and put it in my pocket. I have a detective I trust. She'll protect Jessica. And you. Will she? Because Marcus Cole is still out there, and Ryan still needs you gone. She stood up, shouldering her bag. Be careful, Mr. Mitchell. Your son talked about you like you were already in the ground. And people who talk like that don't usually change their minds. She walked away, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. I sat there alone, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. Ryan's voice still echoing in my head. Once both of them are gone, we're set for life. Not if I had anything to say about it. By the time I made it back to Margaret's office, the sun was starting to sink behind the downtown buildings, casting long shadows across 2nd Avenue. I'd taken 3 different ride shares to get there, changing drivers twice, watching every car behind me. The USB drive felt like it weighed 10 pounds in my pocket. Detective Laura Hayes was already waiting when I walked in. She stood by the window with her arms crossed, 45 years old, with the kind of presence that came from 2 decades working homicide. Short dark hair streaked with gray, no-nonsense pantsuit, and eyes that had seen everything. She didn't waste time on introductions. "You have the recording." I handed her the USB drive. Margaret had already set up her laptop with external speakers, and Hayes plugged it in without sitting down. We listened to it again. Ryan's voice. Marcus's voice. The clinical discussion of break lines and timelines and making my passing look like mechanical failure. Once both of them are gone, we're set for life. When it ended, Hayes ejected the USB and held it up to the light. "This is admissible," she said finally. "Audio quality as decent context is clear. Your source willing to testify about how she obtained it." "She's scared," I said. "But yes." Hayes nodded, then pulled out her phone. "Marcus Cole, 45. I ran him through the system after Margaret called me earlier. He's got 2 priors in Oregon, 1 assault, 1 tampering. Neither stuck. Witnesses recanted and the first case evidence disappeared in the second. Classic. Classic what? So classic professional. The kind who knows how to make problems go away without leaving fingerprints. If your son hired Marcus Cole, he didn't pick an amateur." She sat down across from me, her expression serious. "I've been a homicide detective for 19 years. I've worked cases where family members took each other's lives over money, over property, over petty grudges. But this is premeditated, calculated, and ongoing. Your son didn't just plan your wife's passing. He's planning yours. And he hired someone to do it for him." Margaret leaned forward. "What do we need to proceed?" "We need to prove Catherine Mitchell's passing wasn't natural. Right now we have video evidence of Ryan tampering with her vitamins, his voice discussing a substance that mimics cardiac arrest, and his wife's sponsor testifying about a confession. That's strong, but it's circumstantial until we have physical proof." "The exhumation," I said quietly. Hayes met my eyes. "The exhumation. I know this isn't easy, but it's the only way to prove what your son did. If Catherine was dosed with potassium chloride, the way the recording suggests, traces will remain in her tissue. Heart muscle, liver, kidneys. A good forensic pathologist can detect it even months later." My throat was tight. The thought of Catherine's grave being opened. "I'll make it as dignified as possible," Hayes said. "Evergreen Cemetery early morning before public hours. Just the pathologist, myself, and the necessary technicians. You don't have to be there." "When?" "I need a court order first. Margaret's already drafted an emergency petition to King County Superior Court. If we can get it in front of a judge tonight, we can have the order signed by midnight and proceed at first light." Margaret was already on her phone. "Judge Patricia Holloway owes me a favor. She'll see us." Things moved quickly after that. Margaret left to file the petition in person. Hayes made a series of calls, to the medical examiner's office, to Evergreen Cemetery, to her captain at Seattle PD. I sat in Margaret's office and tried not to think about what Friday morning would look like. An hour later, Margaret returned with a signed order. Judge Holloway had reviewed the evidence and deemed it sufficient for emergency exhumation. Friday, 6 a.m. Hayes checked her watch. "Forensic pathologist will meet us at Evergreen at 0600. We'll extract tissue samples, send them to the state lab for toxicology screening. Results will take about 72 hours for preliminary. But if there's potassium chloride present at the levels your son discussed, we'll know fast. And then we arrest him. Conspiracy to commit homicide, tampering, embezzlement, insurance fraud. We'll bring Marcus Cole in too. But first, Mr. Mitchell, we need to keep you alive long enough to see justice happen." She pulled out a card and slid it across the table. "Protective custody, starting tonight. 2 officers outside whatever location you choose. 24/7 coverage until we have Ryan and Marcus in custody." Margaret pulled out a file folder. "There's something else." In Catherine's voice memo, she mentioned a safe deposit box at Pacific Northwest Bank. We need to access it before Ryan realizes we're moving on him. Hayes looked up. What's in the box? I don't know, I admitted. She said to check it. Then we go first thing tomorrow morning. Before the exhumation, before Ryan knows we're taking action. Hayes stood up. Mr. Mitchell, from this moment forward, you're not alone in this. You have the full weight of Seattle PD homicide behind you. We're going to prove what your son did to your wife, and we're going to stop him from doing it to you. She checked her phone, then her expression shifted. What? I asked. Ryan Mitchell called the station 40 minutes ago. Said he was concerned about his father hasn't been able to reach him. Pretending to be the worried son, my blood ran cold. He knows something's wrong, Hayes said. He knows you're avoiding him, which means we're running out of time. She looked at me, her expression hard. Tomorrow morning at 0600, we'll know what your son did to your wife. Tonight, you're under full protection. But if Ryan called the station asking about you, that means he's getting desperate. Margaret's office suddenly felt very small. Where do I go? I asked. Hayes was already typing. Safe house. Officers are en route now. We leave in 5 minutes. As we stood to go, Margaret touched my arm. Catherine's safe deposit box. Whatever's in there, she wanted you to find it before Ryan could. We'll get it tomorrow, first thing. I nodded, but I was thinking about Hayes's words. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. we'll know. After 5 months of questions, 5 months of grief I couldn't name, because I hadn't known it was grief mixed with betrayal, I would finally have proof. Catherine hadn't just collapsed from a stroke. Our son had ended her life, and tomorrow we'd prove it. Dawn hadn't broken yet when Margaret and I pulled up to Pacific Northwest Bank. The streets were empty, the sky that deep purple-black that comes just before sunrise. We'd left the safe house at 4:32, police officers trailing us in an unmarked car. In less than an hour, they'd be opening Catherine's grave. But first, we needed to know what she'd left behind. The bank manager met us at the entrance, a woman in her 50s, who'd clearly been woken up early for this. Margaret had called in another favor, a judge's order allowing emergency access to the safe deposit box. The manager didn't ask questions, just checked our identification before leading us through the empty lobby to the vault. My hand went to my pocket, feeling for the small envelope I'd found in Catherine's desk. Just a blank white envelope with a single key inside. Now I knew why. "The box 447, the manager said, running her master key through the lock. She stepped back. Take your time. Margaret and I were alone in the small private room. I pulled out the box and set it on the table between us. Inside were 3 things. A thick envelope. Catherine's handwriting on the front, for James. If you're reading this, I'm gone. A legal document folded and bound with a blue cover. Last will and testament of Catherine Ann Mitchell. And a small USB drive in a plastic case labeled April 15th, 1 a.m. I reached for the letter first. 8 pages written in Catherine's careful script. I recognized the pen I'd given her for our 30th anniversary. My vision blurred before I even started reading. My dearest James, if you're reading this, then I failed. I'm so sorry, my love. I had to stop, press my palm against my mouth, force myself to keep reading. I planned to tell you on our anniversary, November 3rd. I was going to show you everything I'd discovered, but I don't think I have until November. Ryan knows I found out about the money. $680,000, James. Our son has been stealing from us for 18 months. When I confronted him 2 weeks ago, he told me about Jessica's gambling debt, about the casino, and then he told me that if I said anything, he would make it look like I had an accident. I didn't believe him at first, but then I saw something in his eyes, something cold and desperate. So I took precautions. I had a camera installed in my reading glasses. Every conversation in our kitchen has been recorded since March 28th. If Ryan did something to me, the evidence is there. I also changed our will. 3 days ago, I met with Helen Patterson. 95% of our estate goes to the Family Justice Foundation. Ryan gets $100,000. Enough to show I didn't cut him out entirely, but not enough to make my passing profitable. James, I need you to understand why I didn't tell you. Because you love him so completely. You've always seen the best in our son, and I couldn't bear to be the one to destroy that. I thought, if I gathered enough evidence, if I gave Ryan one last chance, maybe he'd choose differently. I was wrong, so I'm leaving you this. All the evidence you need, and I'm begging you, please don't confront him alone. Please protect yourself, because my love, I think you're next. I love you. I've loved you since the day you spilled coffee on me in that library 39 years ago. Forgive my silence. I just wanted you to sleep peacefully for a few more nights, without having to cry over our son. All my love, always and forever, Catherine. April 14th, 2024, 11:30 p.m. 3 hours later, she'd collapsed on our kitchen floor. I couldn't speak, just sat there holding those 8 pages. Margaret reached for the will. The legal document was straightforward, dated April 12th, 2024. 95% to the Family Justice Foundation, 5% to Ryan. With the hope that he will use these funds to address the debts that have caused him such distress. Even in her final legal document, Catherine had tried to save him. Margaret picked up the USB drive. We should see what's on this. She plugged it into her laptop. One audio file, timestamped 1:04 a.m. April 15th, 2024. Ryan's voice came through clearly. It's done. She took the vitamins around 11. Should be feeling the effects any time now. Jessica's voice, tearful. What if someone figures it out? They won't. It'll look like a stroke. And even if they do run tests, potassium chloride breaks down. It's hard to detect unless someone specifically tests for it. What about the will, already handled? Tomorrow after the funeral home picks her up, I'll go through her desk. I'll make sure the old will is the only one anyone finds. James will want to see it. Dad will be a mess. Trust me. And by the time he asks about paperwork, it'll be too late. The estate will be settled, and we'll be clear. A pause. Then Jessica quietly, I can't believe we're doing this. We don't have a choice. And Dad, he's got to go too, eventually. The life insurance, the trust. Once both of them are gone, we're set for life. The recording ended. Margaret ejected the USB. He swapped the wills. He thought this copy didn't exist. He thought her passing erased everything she'd done to protect you. I was still holding Catherine's letter. Forgive my silence. I just wanted you to sleep peacefully a few more nights without crying over our son. She knew, I whispered. She knew he was going to do it, and she still tried to save him. Margaret carefully packed everything back. Catherine built you a roadmap. Everything you need to prove what Ryan did to stop him, to make sure her real wishes were honored. I checked my watch, 5:45. In 15 minutes, they'd be opening her grave. Margaret put her hand on my shoulder. She loved you very much. She died alone on our kitchen floor, and I was asleep upstairs. She made sure you'd know eventually. She made sure Ryan wouldn't get away with it. We walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. The police escort was waiting. Detective Hayes was already at Evergreen Cemetery. In a few minutes, we'd have physical proof of what Ryan had done. But I already had everything I needed in my hands. Catherine's words, Catherine's will, Catherine's evidence. My wife had protected me from beyond the grave. Now it was time to make sure she didn't do it in vain. The sun broke over the horizon as the forensic team set up their equipment around Catherine's grave. Evergreen Cemetery was quiet at 6 in the morning. Just the sound of birds waking and the careful, methodical work of professionals who understood the weight of what they were doing. I stood 30 feet back, with Margaret holding the leather folder that contained Catherine's letter and will. Detective Hayes had positioned herself between us and the excavation site. I didn't want to watch, but I couldn't look away. The forensic pathologist had explained the process before they started. Careful excavation, respectful handling, tissue samples from the heart, liver, and kidneys. Catherine's body would be treated with dignity, then returned to rest within hours. It didn't make it any easier to watch them begin. Hayes's phone rang at 6:12. She stepped away to answer it, her expression shifting from professional calm to sharp alertness. When she walked back, her jaw was tight. "We have a problem. Your son is at the precinct." My stomach dropped. "What?" "He filed a missing person report at 5:30 this morning. Claims you've been missing for 48 hours, that you're showing signs of cognitive decline and may be a danger to yourself. He brought a psychiatrist with him and is demanding an emergency psychiatric evaluation." Margaret's expression went cold. "He's trying to have James declared incompetent. That's exactly what he's trying to do." Hayes looked at me. "If he can get a doctor to sign off that you're mentally unfit, he can petition for emergency conservatorship. Control your finances, your medical decisions, everything. Can he do that?" "Not if we move fast." Hayes was already walking toward her car. "We need to get to the station now." We drove to the precinct in 15 minutes that felt like an hour. The Seattle Police Department downtown precinct was just starting its morning shift change when we pulled in. Hayes led us through a side entrance to a conference room on the second floor. Ryan was there with a man I didn't recognize. Late 40s, expensive suit, wire-rimmed glasses. The psychiatrist. They both stood when we entered. Ryan's face was a perfect mask of concern. "Dad, thank God. We've been so worried. You haven't answered your phone in 2 days." "Cut it," Hayes said flatly. "Save the performance for someone who doesn't have video evidence of you discussing your father's brake lines." Ryan's expression flickered, just for a second. Then the concern was back. "Detective, I don't know what you think you have, but my father is clearly not well. He's been exhibiting signs of paranoia, possibly early-stage dementia." The psychiatrist stepped forward. "Dr. Nathan Pierce. I've known the Mitchell family for several years. Ryan called me this morning concerned about his father's mental state. I'm here to conduct a voluntary evaluation." "There's nothing voluntary about this," Margaret cut in. "My client is under protective custody of the Seattle Police Department following credible threats to his life. This is a coordinated effort to have his father declared incompetent so he can seize control of financial assets. I'm refusing any psychiatric evaluation," I said, my voice steady. Ryan took a step toward me. "Dad, please. I'm just trying to help. You haven't been yourself since Mom passed." I reached into the leather folder and pulled out Catherine's letter. 8 pages in her handwriting. "Your mother wrote this the night you ended her life. April 14th, 11:30 p.m. 3 hours before she collapsed. Want me to read it to everyone here? The part where she says you threatened her, or the part where she warns me that you're planning to do the same thing to me?" Ryan went very still. I set the letter down and pulled out the will. "Or maybe we should discuss the will you tried to hide. The one where your mother left 95% of our estate to charity. The will you thought you destroyed." Dr. Pierce was looking between Ryan and me, confused. "Ryan, what is he talking about? Or?" Hayes said, pulling out her phone. "We could play the recording of you and Marcus Cole discussing how to cut Mr. Mitchell's brake lines. That one's particularly compelling." Ryan's mask finally slipped. His face went blank, calculating. I want my attorney. You're going to need one, Hayes said. She turned to Dr. Pierce. Doctor, how much did Ryan pay you to come here this morning? Dr. Pierce stiffened. The silence stretched. Finally, $15,000. Why did you write a psychiatric evaluation before you ever saw my client? No. Another pause. Ryan provided me with background information. I drafted a preliminary assessment based on that information, yes. Nihon. An assessment declaring James Mitchell mentally incompetent. A recommendation for emergency conservatorship pending full evaluation. Hayes looked at her officers. Detain Dr. Pierce for questioning. Potential conspiracy fraud, false medical documentation. Ryan watched his friend being led away, then turned back to us. His expression was cold, now the mask completely gone. You can't prove anything. We're exhuming your mother's body right now, Hayes said. By this afternoon, we'll have tissue samples. By Monday, we'll have toxicology results showing exactly what you put in her vitamins. It's over, Ryan. For a long moment, Ryan just stared at me. Then he said very quietly, You're really going to do this. You're going to destroy your own son. And you destroyed yourself, I said. The day you put that substance in your mother's vitamins. Ryan turned and walked out without another word. Hayes made a call, instructing officers to follow him. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then her face went pale. It's a text, from a number I don't recognize. She showed me the screen. This is Jessica Mitchell. Marcus is coming to the motel tonight. Ryan told him I'm a liability. He's going to make it look like I ended my own life from guilt. I can't run anymore. Please help me. Hayes read it over my shoulder, then swore under her breath. Motel 6, Tacoma room 214. How fast can we get there? Margaret asked. Hayes was already moving. 45 minutes if we push it. Or Ryan panicked and told Marcus to move faster, I said. If he's desperate enough to try the psychiatric trap, he's desperate enough to eliminate anyone who can testify against him. Hayes pulled out her radio. I'll get Tacoma PD to do a welfare check. We bring Jessica in, put her in protective custody, and wait for the toxicology results. Then we arrest Ryan and Marcus simultaneously. We left the precinct as the morning sun climbed higher. Somewhere in Evergreen Cemetery, they were collecting evidence from Catherine's body. Somewhere in Tacoma, Jessica was hiding. And somewhere Ryan and Marcus were regrouping. But for the first time in days, I felt like we were a step ahead. Catherine had given us the roadmap. Now we just had to follow it to the end. By 6 that evening, Jessica Mitchell was sitting in a witness protection safe house on the north side of Seattle, wrapped in a blanket, despite the room being warm, shaking like she'd never stop. Hayes and her tactical team had pulled Jessica out of the Tacoma motel at noon. They'd moved her through the back, into an unmarked van, and straight to a secure location where Ryan and Marcus couldn't reach her. Now she sat across from me in a small conference room, Margaret on one side, Hayes on the other, and 2 officers stationed outside the door. She looked nothing like the woman I'd met at Ryan's wedding 5 years ago. That Jessica had been confident, charming, always laughing. This Jessica was hollowed out, her eyes red from crying. I'm sorry, she said for the 5th time. I'm so sorry about Catherine. I never thought he'd actually do it. I thought he was just venting, trying to scare me into finding another way to handle the debt. Margaret's voice was measured. Jessica, we've offered you full immunity in exchange for your complete cooperation. That means testifying against Ryan and answering every question truthfully. Do you understand? Yes. Then tell us everything. The plan for tomorrow morning. Every detail. Jessica took a shaky breath. Marcus is supposed to meet Ryan at 5:30 tomorrow morning. At your house. She looked at me. Ryan had a spare key made 6 months ago. My house. The place Catherine and I had lived for 23 years. Where she'd collapsed on our kitchen floor. What's the plan? Hayes asked. Marcus is going to make it look like James took too many pills. Sleeping medication may be mixed with alcohol. They're going to stage it like a suicide. A widower who couldn't handle the grief of losing his wife. The room went very quiet. Ryan will show up later, Jessica continued. Around noon. He'll call the police, say he'd been trying to reach his father all morning and got worried. He'll be the devastated son who just lost both his parents within 6 months. No one will question it. How do you know all this? Margaret asked. Ryan told me. 2 nights ago when I said I couldn't do it anymore. He said it was too late to back out now that if I tried to run or talk, Marcus would take care of me the same way. Hayes leaned forward. Jessica, has Ryan discussed any contingency plans? Then Ryan does it himself. He has pills in his car. He said one way or another it has to happen this weekend before the toxicology results come back. He knows you're looking into Catherine's passing. He knows time is running out. Hayes pulled out a notepad. Here's what we're going to do. Mr. Mitchell, you're going to be in your house tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. We wire you up. Recording device, GPS tracker, panic button. You'll be sitting in your living room when Ryan arrives. You want me to confront him. I want you to give him the opportunity to confess. Keep him talking. Ask him questions. Let him think he's got you cornered. People like Ryan, intelligent, arrogant, they can't help themselves. They want you to know how clever they've been. And if he doesn't confess, Margaret's expression was grim. Then we have nothing admissible until the toxicology results come back Monday. And by then Ryan might flee. We need him on tape, James. What about Marcus? We'll have 6 officers positioned in houses around yours. The moment Ryan or Marcus makes a move toward you, we're 10 seconds away. Jessica spoke up quietly. Marcus won't come inside until he's sure it's safe. Ryan will go in alone first. Then that's when we get Ryan's confession, Hayes said. Before Marcus enters, we arrest Ryan inside, then take Marcus when he approaches. And if something goes wrong, I asked. Hayes met my eyes. Then you hit the panic button and we breach the house. But I have to be honest with you. This is high risk. Ryan is desperate and desperate people are unpredictable. I thought about Catherine's letter, about how she'd faced Ryan alone gathering evidence trying to protect me, about how she'd died on our kitchen floor while I slept upstairs. I'll do it, I said. Hayes nodded slowly. Then we start preparing now. I'll have a tech come in tonight to fit you with the wire and go over the panic button protocols. The officers will be in position by 4:30 a.m. You'll enter your house at 5 turn on a single lamp in the living room and wait. And I just talk to him. You talk to him. You listen. You let him tell you what he did. And you stay calm no matter what he says. The rest of the evening was a blur of preparation. A tech fitted me with a wire so small I could barely feel it tucked into my collar. The GPS tracker went into my shoe. The panic button looked like a car key fob. 3 clicks, the tech explained. Click 3 times fast, and every officer knows you need immediate extraction. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Just lay in the spare bed at the safe house, staring at the ceiling, thinking about tomorrow. At 4:30 a.m., Hayes drove me home. The street was dark, quiet. My neighbors' houses looked ordinary, but I knew 6 officers were inside watching, waiting. Hayes pulled up 2 houses down. You walk from here. Go in through the front door like normal. 1 lamp in the living room. Sit where we can see you through the window. And James, whatever happens, we're right there. You're not alone. I walked to my house in the pre-dawn darkness. Used my key. Stepped inside. Everything was exactly as I'd left it days ago. Catherine's reading glasses still on her desk. The coffee mug I'd forgotten to wash. The house where we'd built a life, raised a son, grown old together. The house where that son had ended her life. I turned on the lamp by the couch. Sat down in the chair facing the window. Checked the wire, the GPS, the panic button. 5 a.m. The house was completely silent, except for the clock, ticking in the kitchen. I waited. 5:15, 5:30, 5:45. At 5:52, I heard it. The sound of a key sliding into the lock. The front door opened slowly, carefully. Ryan stepped inside, silhouetted against the early morning light. He was carrying a black duffel bag. Our eyes met across the dark living room, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I was face to face with my son. Ryan closed the door behind him and flipped the light switch. The sudden brightness made me blink, but I didn't move from my seat on the couch. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then his face arranged itself into an expression of relief that might have fooled me a week ago. Dad, I was so worried. You haven't been answering your phone. I stayed exactly where I was. My hand in my pocket wrapped around the panic button. The wire under my collar was recording every word. Through the window, I could see faint movement in the Hendersons' house. Hayes and her team watching. I know about the $680,000, Ryan. I know about Jessica's debt. I know about Marcus. The relief on his face evaporated. He stood very still. Then he laughed. A cold, empty sound. So who told you, Allison, or did Jessica finally crack? He shook his head. Doesn't matter. You're here. That's what matters. He knelt down and unzipped the black duffel bag slowly. When he looked back up at me, the mask was completely gone. Do you want to see what I brought? He started pulling items out one by one, setting them on the coffee table. A bottle of sleeping pills. Prescription label torn off. A syringe still in its sterile packaging. A coil of rope. Latex gloves. A bottle of whiskey. This is what grief looks like, Dad. A 64-year-old widower who couldn't handle losing his wife. Too many pills, maybe some alcohol. You leave a note. I already wrote it in your handwriting. Says you can't live without Mom. Very touching. I couldn't speak. This was the boy I'd taught to ride a bike. My only son. You look shocked, Ryan said, pulling on the latex gloves. You shouldn't be. You're the one who started investigating. You couldn't just accept that Mom had a stroke and move on. She didn't have a stroke. No. Ryan agreed. She didn't. Mom found out about the trust money in March. Started documenting every withdrawal. She confronted me 3 weeks before she passed. Said if I didn't put the money back, she'd cut me out of the will and go to the police. He picked up the bottle of sleeping pills. I tried to reason with her. Explained about Jessica's debt. $920,000. The casino isn't the kind of people you just say no to. So you ended your mother's life for money. Ryan's expression hardened. I saved my wife's life. And mine. Mom had her whole life already. Jessica and I had decades ahead. It was a practical decision. A practical decision. Yes. Potassium chloride. Mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. Breaks down quickly. I put it in her vitamins on the 14th. She took them that night around 11. By 3 a.m. it was done. You watched her collapse. You waited 12 minutes before calling for help. 12 minutes. I needed to make sure. That's not cruelty, Dad. That's thoroughness. My hand tightened around the panic button. Not yet. Hayes had said to let him talk. And the will. Mom drew up a new will, leaving 95% to charity. Only gave me $100,000. So the day after the funeral, while you were upstairs crying, I went through her desk, found the new will and destroyed it. Replaced it with the old one. The one that leaves me $1.5 million. Except she had another copy. In a safe deposit box. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Doesn't matter now. By the time anyone finds it, you'll be gone too, and I'll have settled the estate. He stood up, holding the bottle of pills and the syringe. You're going to take these pills. All of them. If you cooperate, it'll be painless. If you don't, I use the syringe. Either way, you'll be unconscious. Then I wait 30 minutes, come back and discover you. He took a step closer. This one's on you. You could have signed the power of attorney. Could have stayed out of it. But you had to dig. You had to find those glasses. He stopped. The glasses. Where are Mom's glasses? His eyes went wide. The camera. She hid a camera in her glasses, didn't she? I didn't answer. Of course she did. I walked past them every day for 5 months. She recorded everything. Me putting the substance in her vitamins. Me watching her on the kitchen floor. He looked at me with something that might have been respect if it wasn't so twisted. Which means you've seen the videos. Which means you're recording this conversation right now. He moved fast, grabbed my shirt collar, yanked me up. His hands found the wire, ripped it away, threw it on the floor, and stomped on it. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? My hand was already pressing the panic button. 3 clicks. Ryan picked up the syringe, tore open the packaging. You should have trusted your son instead of playing detective. This is your fault. He took a step toward me, syringe raised. The front door exploded inward. Detective Hayes came through, first weapon drawn, 6 officers behind her. Seattle police dropped the weapon hands where I can see them. Ryan froze. For a second I thought he might fight. Then he dropped the syringe. It clattered on the hardwood floor. He sank to his knees, slowly, hands raised. I want my lawyer. Hayes moved in, cuffing him, while officers secured the duffel bag and photographed the contents. Another officer helped me up. You got it all? I asked Hayes. Even after he broke the wire, she tapped her ear. Backup recording from the device in your shoe, and we heard enough through the window. We've got his full confession, Mr. Mitchell. Every word. Ryan looked at me from the floor, his hands cuffed. You're really going to testify against your own son? You're not my son, I said quietly. I don't know who you are, but you're not the child Catherine and I raised. They led him out in handcuffs, blue lights flashing, more police cars arriving. Margaret appeared in the doorway. James, are you all right? I wasn't. Wouldn't be for a long time. Maybe never. But I nodded anyway. It's over, Hayes said. As they cleared my house, collecting evidence, I stood in my living room and looked at everything Ryan had brought. The pills, the rope, the note he'd forged. My son had come here to take my life the way he'd taken his mother's, and Catherine had made sure I'd be ready. Her glasses, her letter, her voice memo, her will. She'd fought him from beyond the grave and won. Detective Hayes stood over Ryan, her voice clear and measured as she read him his Miranda rights. Ryan knelt on my living room floor, hands cuffed behind his back, his face blank. The duffel bag and all its contents were being photographed by a crime scene tech. Do you understand these rights as I have read them to you? Why, I want my lawyer, Ryan said. His voice was flat, emotionless. I'm not saying another word. You've already said plenty. Hayes pulled out her phone, tapped the screen. Ryan's voice filled the room. The confession from minutes ago, crystal clear. I had no choice. The casino gave Jessica until December 31st. Hayes stopped the playback. Your confession was recorded on the backup device we installed in your father's smoke detector yesterday. Even after you destroyed the primary wire, we captured every word. I blinked. Smoke detector Hayes had kept it secret even from me insurance in case Ryan searched me and found the wire. Smart, one of the officers radioed from the back. Detective, we've got movement at the rear entrance. Hayes's hand went to her weapon. Who? Male hands raised, says he's here to surrender. Hayes moved toward the back door. I followed. The door opened slowly. A man stepped through, mid-40s, average height, wearing dark clothes. His hands were raised. Marcus Cole, he said calmly. I'm here to turn myself in. Hayes's weapon stayed trained on him. On your knees, hands behind your head. Marcus complied smoothly. I'm not armed, and I have information you're going to want. A USB drive in my left jacket pocket. Hayes nodded to an officer who retrieved the drive. They patted Marcus down. Why are you here? Hayes asked. Because I'm a professional. and professionals don't go down for amateurs. Marcus looked past Hayes to where Ryan was being held. I have recordings of every conversation with Ryan Mitchell since October 1st. 8 files. Every planning session, every payment discussion, every detail of what he wanted me to do. Hayes's eyes narrowed. The brake tampering. The brake tampering that I never actually did, Marcus corrected. When a civil attorney approaches me about making his father have an accident, I don't just take the job. I investigate, I record. I gather insurance. He smiled cold and professional. Guys like Ryan Mitchell always try to eliminate loose ends. So I took his money, $50,000 up front, and I documented everything. When it went sideways like this morning, I'd have proof I was just a contractor following orders. You were gathering evidence against your own client, Hayes said. I was covering my assets. Ryan was always going to lose. Hayes held up the USB. What's on this? 8 recordings. October 1st through yesterday. Every conversation. Ryan explaining about his mother about the potassium chloride. Ryan talking about his father about staging it as a grief-driven overdose. Ryan discussing payment schedules, $50,000 total. Marcus met Hayes's eyes. And for what it's worth, I never touched James Mitchell's car. Never cut any brake lines. I was stalling, waiting to see if Ryan would actually go through with it before I implicated myself. Hayes looked at me. Mr. Mitchell, do you know this man? Never seen him before in my life. Hayes turned back to Marcus. You're still under arrest for conspiracy. Well, I understand, but I'm willing to testify against Ryan Mitchell in exchange for a plea deal. Full cooperation. You get your homicide conviction, and I walk with reduced charges. They cuffed Marcus and led him to a separate vehicle. As they passed Ryan, Marcus looked at him with something like pity. I told you I don't work with amateurs. Another vehicle pulled up. Jessica escorted by officers. They brought her into the house, and she stood in the doorway looking at the scene. Is it over? She whispered. Hayes nodded. We need you to confirm what Marcus Cole just told us. Jessica's testimony was brief, but damning. Yes, Ryan had hired Marcus. Yes, she'd known about the plans. Yes, Ryan had said they needed both James and Catherine gone by year's end. At 7:30, Margaret's phone rang. When she came back in, she was pale. That was the forensic pathologist. Preliminary results from the exhumation. She looked at Hayes. High concentration of a toxic substance in Catherine's heart tissue. Consistent with potassium chloride. They're running comprehensive tests, but the pathologist says there's no question. This wasn't natural causes. Hayes nodded slowly. Then this is officially a homicide investigation. They loaded Ryan into a police car. Through the window, he looked at me one last time. You destroyed your only son for a dead woman, Dad. I walked closer, made sure he could hear me. You destroyed yourself the day you put that substance in your mother's vitamins. The door closed. The police car pulled away, taking my son to a place he'd probably spend the rest of his life. I stood in my front yard as the sun climbed higher. Neighbors watched from a respectful distance. For the first time in 5 months, I could breathe. Catherine had spent her final hours gathering evidence, protecting me, making sure Ryan wouldn't get away with what he'd done. She'd hidden cameras, recorded conversations, changed her will-written letters. She'd fought him every step of the way. And now, standing in the morning light with police cars surrounding my house and my son in custody, I realized something. She'd won, not just for herself, for me, for justice itself. Hayes approached me, her expression softer than I'd seen it. You should get some rest, Mr. Mitchell. We'll need your full statement later today, but for now you're safe. It's over. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As the police finished their work and started to clear out, I looked up at the sky. It was going to be a beautiful day, and Catherine, wherever she was, knew that her husband was safe. That had to be enough. A week after Ryan's arrest, Margaret called with news I didn't want to hear. He made bail. I was standing in my kitchen. the same kitchen where Catherine had collapsed. I gripped the counter. How the judge set it at $2 million. Jessica's family posted it. Her parents are wealthy, old money from Charleston. They put up property as collateral. Margaret's voice was tight with frustration. My guess is Jessica convinced them Ryan's being railroaded. So he's just out with conditions. Surrendered his passport, ankle monitor, can't leave King County, can't contact you or any witnesses. But yes, James, he's out. I looked at the kitchen floor where Catherine had fallen. Ryan was somewhere in Seattle right now, free while my wife was in the ground. Tell me we can still win this. We can, but his attorney is good and he's already making moves. That afternoon, I met Margaret at her office. She'd spread legal documents across her desk. Motions, filings, medical reports. Jonathan Price, Margaret said, tapping a business card. 55, former King County prosecutor, won 3 high-profile homicide defenses in the past decade. Ryan hired the best. What's he arguing? Margaret slid a motion across the desk. Insanity defense. Claims Ryan suffered a severe psychological breakdown after discovering his mother had Alzheimer's disease. Catherine didn't have Alzheimer's. I know. It's fabricated. But Price is building a narrative. Devoted son learns his mother is declining, becomes mentally unstable. He's citing a psychiatric evaluation from September signed by Dr. Nathan Pierce. I stared at the document. Dr. Pierce. The same psychiatrist who'd tried to have me declared incompetent. Pierce was arrested, I said. Exactly. Which is why this defense isn't going to work. Margaret pulled out another file. After Pierce was detained, we subpoenaed his financial records. She showed me a spreadsheet. Payments from Ryan to Dr. Nathan Pierce dating back 3 years. $280,000 total. 9 psychiatric evaluations, Margaret said. 9 separate reports over 3 years, all documenting Ryan's supposed mental health struggles. All fake. All purchased. He was building an insanity defense for 3 years. He was building insurance. Ryan knew if he ever got caught doing something criminal, he'd need a paper trail showing mental illness. So he paid Pierce to create one. I sat back. That's not insanity. That's premeditation. Exactly. And that's what I'll argue when this goes to trial. A truly mentally ill person doesn't spend 3 years and $280,000 manufacturing evidence of their own insanity. That's what a calculating criminal does. Margaret pulled out more documents. There's more. Thomas Reed kept digging. Found an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Ryan transferred $150,000 from your family trust to that account. He was hiding money, James. Planning long-term. Planning to eliminate you and Catherine and disappear. She spread out 5 more documents, each stamped with the King County Prosecutor's Office seal. Amanda Morrison is the prosecutor. She's filed formal charges, 5 counts. Margaret read them aloud. Count 1, homicide in the 1st degree. Life without possibility of parole. Count 2, attempted conspiracy to cause harm. 25 years. Count 3, embezzlement. 20 years. Count 4, insurance fraud. 15 years. Count 5, criminal conspiracy. 20 years. She set the documents down. If convicted on all counts, Ryan will spend the rest of his life in prison. What are his chances? Margaret didn't sugarcoat it. With the evidence we have low, we have video of him tampering with Catherine's vitamins. We have his voice discussing potassium chloride. We have Catherine's letter and voice memo. We have the exhumation results. We have Marcus Cole's recordings. We have the fake insurance policy, the fake psychiatric reports, the offshore accounts. She leaned forward. Jonathan Price is good, but he's not a magician. Ryan doesn't have a mental illness. He has a gambling wife, a mountain of debt, and a willingness to take his own parents' lives to solve his financial problems. When's the trial? Amanda's pushing for early December. Jury selection will probably start the first week, less than a month away. What do you need from me? Testimony. You'll be our key witness. Amanda will walk you through finding the glasses, the videos, Catherine's letter, the confrontation with Ryan. She'll need you to be clear, calm, and credible. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. James. Margaret's voice softened. Are you ready for this? Ready to sit in a courtroom and testify against your son? I thought about Catherine's letter, about how she'd spent her final hours protecting me, about how she'd gathered evidence knowing she might not survive to see justice done. I'm ready. That evening, a letter arrived at my house, hand-delivered by someone from Ryan's defense team. My name on the envelope in Ryan's handwriting. I almost threw it away, but I opened it. Dad, I'm sorry. I know those words aren't enough. I was desperate. Jessica's debt was crushing me. I never meant for things to go this far. I never wanted to hurt Mom. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, Dad, drop the charges. Talk to the prosecutor. Tell them you don't want to pursue this. I'm still your son. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I can change. I can get help. Please don't let them put me in prison for the rest of my life. Please don't throw away your only son. I love you, Dad. Ryan. I read it twice. Looked for the son I'd raised somewhere in those words. Looked for genuine remorse. All I found was manipulation. He wasn't sorry he'd taken Catherine's life. He was sorry he'd been caught. I tore the letter in half, then in half again, dropped the pieces in the trash. Margaret had asked if I was ready to testify against my son. I was, because the man who wrote that letter wasn't my son anymore. The trial would start in 3 weeks, and when it did, I'd make sure Catherine's voice was heard. Every word she'd recorded, every piece of evidence she'd gathered, every truth she'd fought to preserve. Ryan wanted mercy, but justice for Catherine mattered more. November 4th arrived cold and gray, the kind of Seattle morning where the rain held off, but the sky promised it wouldn't wait long. Margaret and I walked up the steps of the King County Superior Court together. Camera crews lined the sidewalk. This had become a media story. I kept my head down, let Margaret run interference with the reporters shouting questions. Inside the courthouse was all marble and echoes. We went through security, took the elevator to the 4th floor. Courtroom 4C. The Honorable Patricia Holloway presiding. Judge Holloway sat at the bench reviewing documents while the courtroom filled. 60 years old, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, the kind of judge who didn't tolerate nonsense. Ryan was already there with Jonathan Price sitting at the defense table. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, conservative tie. His ankle monitor was hidden under his slacks. He glanced back when I entered. Our eyes met for half a second. Then he looked away. The jury box filled. 12 people selected over 2 days. 7 women, 5 men. A retired teacher, a software engineer, a nurse, an accountant. 12 strangers who would decide my son's fate. Judge Holloway called the court to order at 9 a.m. sharp. The People versus Ryan Thomas Mitchell. Counsel, are you ready to proceed with opening statements? Amanda Morrison stood. She'd worn navy blue today, her dark hair pulled back. Professional, serious, prepared. Your Honor, the people are ready. Amanda walked to the jury box, made eye contact with each juror before she began. This is a case about greed, about betrayal, about premeditation. Ryan Mitchell didn't just take his mother's life. He planned it for months, purchased the substance, tampered with her vitamins, watched her collapse on her kitchen floor and waited 12 minutes before calling for help. Her voice was measured, factual, devastating. But he didn't stop there. Ryan Mitchell also planned his father's end. Hired a professional, forged life insurance documents, attempted to have his father declared mentally incompetent so he could seize control of a $3.2 million estate. She let that number hang in the air. Over the next week, you'll hear from James Mitchell. You'll see video evidence of Ryan tampering with his mother's vitamins. You'll hear Catherine Mitchell's voice in a recording made hours before she passed, warning her husband that their son was planning to take both their lives. You'll hear forensic evidence proving Catherine didn't have a natural passing. Amanda returned to the prosecution table. You'll also hear from Dr. Nathan Pierce, a psychiatrist who accepted $280,000 from Ryan Mitchell over 3 years to manufacture fake psychiatric reports. Reports designed to create an insanity defense if Ryan ever got caught. Because that's what calculated criminals do. They plan for contingencies. She looked at Ryan. Ryan Mitchell is 39 years old, a licensed attorney, an intelligent man who knew exactly what he was doing. This isn't a tragedy of mental illness. This is a story of greed and violence, and at the end of this trial, we will ask you to hold Ryan Mitchell accountable. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Jonathan Price rose. He dressed more casually, gray suit, no tie. He smiled sadly at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is indeed a tragedy. But it's not the tragedy Ms. Morrison just described. This is a tragedy of a family destroyed by mental illness. He walked slowly toward the jury box. Ryan Mitchell loved his mother, loved his father. But over the past 3 years, Ryan has been suffering from an undiagnosed dissociative disorder, a mental condition that causes breaks from reality, impaired judgment. Dr. Pierce evaluated Ryan and documented these symptoms. Someone in the jury box shifted uncomfortably. Jonathan kept going, but it was a weak opening. The fake psychiatric reports had destroyed any credibility the insanity defense might have had. Judge Holloway looked at Amanda. "Call your first witness." The people called James Robert Mitchell. I stood. Margaret gave my arm a brief squeeze. I walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, sat down facing the courtroom. Amanda led me through it methodically. Finding Catherine's glasses, the videos of Ryan tampering with vitamins, Catherine's voice memo, the safe deposit box, the confrontation in my living room where Ryan confessed. I kept my voice steady, answered every question. Then Jonathan Price stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Mitchell, you testified that you were grieving your wife. Isn't it true that you experienced significant depression during that time?" "I was mourning my wife of 38 years. Mourning can affect perception, can't it? Make us see things that aren't there." I looked directly at him. "I saw my son on video putting a substance in his mother's vitamins. I heard him confess to delaying the 911 call for 12 minutes. That's not grief affecting my perception. That's evidence." Jonathan tried a few more angles, but I didn't break. After 20 minutes, Judge Holloway let me step down. The next 3 days were a parade of evidence. Amanda presented everything systematically. The hidden camera videos, Catherine's voice memo, the recordings from Allison and Marcus Cole, the forensic pathologist's report, the financial analysis, the fake insurance policy, Catherine's will. Each piece landed like a hammer blow. I watched the jury's faces, saw shock, disgust, anger. On day 5, Dr. Nathan Pierce took the stand. Amanda tore him apart. "Dr. Pierce, how much did Ryan Mitchell pay you to write fake psychiatric evaluations?" Pierce's voice was barely a whisper. $280,000, over 3 years. For 9 reports documenting mental illness that didn't exist, Pierce had no answers. By the time she dismissed him, he was visibly shaking. On day 6, Ryan took the stand. The courtroom went silent. Jonathan Price asked 3 preliminary questions. Then, "Ryan, did you intentionally harm your mother?" Ryan looked at the jury, at Judge Holloway, at me. Then he said, "I invoke my 5th Amendment right against self-incrimination." The courtroom erupted. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. In the jury's eyes, guilty people pleaded the 5th. Innocent people defended themselves. Closing arguments took another day. Then it was over. The jury filed out to deliberate. Hours passed. Finally, at 4:30 in the afternoon, the bailiff announced they had a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom. The jury returned. I couldn't read their faces. Judge Holloway looked at the foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. My heart was pounding. The foreperson stood and began to read. I thought I was prepared for the verdict. I wasn't. 4 days had passed since I sat in that witness box. 4 days since I'd answered Amanda Morrison's questions about the glasses, the videos, the voice memo. 4 days since I'd watched Ryan invoke his Fifth Amendment right and refused to testify. Now, on the morning of November 8th, I stood outside courtroom 4C with Margaret Thornton waiting for the jury to return. They'd been deliberating for 9 hours. Margaret checked her phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Juries that deliberate this long usually mean one of 2 things, she said quietly. Either they're deadlocked or they're being very, very thorough. I nodded, but I didn't trust my voice. My hands were shaking again, just like they had when I'd first held Catherine's glasses in Daniel Porter's shop. Just like they had when I'd listened to her voice memo for the first time. I pressed them flat against my thighs and stared at the courthouse floor. At 10:47 a.m., the bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Jury's back. The gallery was packed. I took my seat in the front row, Margaret beside me. Across the aisle, Jonathan Price sat alone at the defense table. Ryan was brought in through the side door, his hands cuffed in front of him, his face blank. He didn't look at me. Judge Patricia Holloway entered. We all rose. Please be seated, she said. Her voice was calm, measured. She turned to the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? The foreperson. A woman in her early 60s, a retired schoolteacher from Ballard, stood. We have, Your Honor. The bailiff took the verdict forms from her and handed them to the judge. Holloway reviewed them in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she handed them back. The defendant will rise. Ryan stood. Jonathan Price stood beside him. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Catherine Ann Mitchell. The foreperson read, her voice steady. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ryan Thomas Mitchell, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Someone behind me gasped. I heard a woman sob. Margaret's hand found mine and squeezed. On the charge of conspiracy to cause harm to James Robert Mitchell, we find the defendant guilty. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. On the charge of embezzlement of $680,000 from the Mitchell Family Trust, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud involving a false life insurance policy valued at $1.5 million, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of criminal conspiracy in hiring Marcus Andrew Cole, we find the defendant guilty. Judge Holloway waited until the courtroom quieted. Mr. Mitchell, you have been found guilty on all 5 counts. Sentencing is set for November 22, 2024 at 9 a.m. Bailiff remanded the defendant. Ryan turned his head just slightly and looked at me for the first time since the verdict. His eyes were empty. Then he was led away. Outside the courthouse, Margaret read a brief statement to the press. I stood beside her, hands in my pockets, squinting against the November sun. Catherine Mitchell spent the final hours of her life gathering evidence to protect her husband and expose a terrible scheme, Margaret said. Today, justice was served not because of the legal system alone, but because she refused to let fear silence her. We honor her courage, and we hope this verdict brings some measure of peace to her family. A reporter called out, Mr. Mitchell, do you have anything to say? I shook my head. Margaret guided me toward her car. The courtroom was quieter this time. No cameras inside, no crowd in the gallery. Just me, Margaret Amanda Morrison, Jonathan Price, and a handful of court staff. Judge Holloway reviewed the pre-sentence report in silence. Then she looked up. "Mr. Mitchell, you have been convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, embezzlement, fraud, and criminal conspiracy. The law allows me to impose a sentence that reflects the gravity of these offenses and the harm you have caused." She paused. "For the murder of Catherine Ann Mitchell, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For each of the remaining 4 counts, I sentence you to 25 years to be served concurrently with the life sentence." Ryan stood perfectly still. "Do you wish to make a statement?" the judge asked. He shook his head. "Then this court is adjourned." The visitation room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. I sat on a metal stool, staring at the plexiglass partition, waiting. A guard led Ryan to the opposite side. He picked up the telephone handset. I picked up mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "None of you came," he said finally. I came to say goodbye," I replied. He looked older, thinner. His prison jumpsuit hung loose on his shoulders. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said. I needed the money. Jessica's family, the casino, the debt, it was crushing us. And Mom found out. She was going to cut me off Dad. I panicked. "You put a harmful substance in her vitamins," I said quietly. "You watched her collapse. You waited 12 minutes before calling for help." His eyes flickered. "I know, and you plan to do the same to me." He didn't answer. I set the phone down on the counter, stood up, and walked toward the exit. "Dad," I didn't look back. I drove home in silence. In my rearview mirror, the barbed wire fence of the penitentiary grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. I didn't cry. Catherine had fought for the facts in her final hours. She'd left me a map, a warning, a will. She'd made sure I wouldn't become the next name on Ryan's list, and now justice was done. The apartment was quiet in a way the old house never was. I sat in the corner armchair of my new place in Capitol Hill, a one-bedroom unit on the 6th floor with a view of Puget Sound. It was December 2024, 6 weeks since the sentencing, 8 months since I'd found Catherine's glasses with the broken hinge. The rain tapped softly against the window, and for the first time in over a year, I didn't feel the walls closing in. Margaret had helped me find this place. "You need a fresh start, James," she'd said. "Somewhere Catherine's memory can rest without haunting you." She was right. I couldn't live in that house anymore. Not in the kitchen where Catherine had collapsed. Not in the bedroom where we'd shared 38 years of mornings. So I'd packed what mattered: a few photographs, her favorite books, the wooden box, where she kept her gardening gloves. Everything else I donated. The apartment was small, clean, and faced east. Every morning the sun rose over the water, and I made coffee and watched the ferries cross the Sound. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a life I could live. Margaret called me on a Tuesday afternoon in March 2025. "James, I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was careful, the way it always was when she had bad news. "What is it?" "It's Jessica. She had a severe reaction to medication at Evergreen Rehabilitation Center last week. She's alive, but the doctors say the brain damage is permanent. Short-term memory loss, cognitive impairment. She'll need lifelong medical care." I closed my eyes. I should have felt something: anger, pity, satisfaction. But all I felt was a dull, hollow sadness. "Her family is arranging long-term care," Margaret continued. "They asked if you'd be willing to visit." "No," I said quietly. "Surprise?" She helped him plan it, Margaret. She knew what Ryan was going to do, and she said nothing. I'm not going to sit by her bedside and pretend that didn't happen. Margaret was silent for a moment. "I understand." After we hung up, I stood by the window for a long time watching the rain. Jessica would spend the rest of her life in a fog, unable to remember what she'd done or why, and I would spend the rest of mine trying to forget. On a bright Thursday morning in May, I drove to the offices of Patterson and Marks in Pioneer Square. Helen Patterson, the attorney who'd notarized Catherine's final will, greeted me in the conference room. "Mr. Mitchell," she said warmly, "it's time. She opened a folder and slid a document across the table. Execution of the last will and testament of Catherine Ann Mitchell. 95% of Catherine's estate, $2. 7 million was transferred to the Family Justice Foundation, a nonprofit that provided free legal aid to elderly victims of financial abuse. The foundation would like to create a new initiative in Catherine's name, Helen said. The Catherine Mitchell Elder Protection Initiative. It will fund legal clinics, emergency intervention, and educational workshops for seniors and their families. I knotted my throat tight. She would have loved that. 2 weeks later, I attended the launch event at the Seattle Public Library. A small plaque was unveiled in the foundation's lobby, engraved with Catherine's name and the dates of her life. A dozen elderly clients stood in the audience, people who'd been helped by the program in its first month. One woman, a grandmother in her 70s, approached me afterward. "Your wife saved my house," she said, tears in her eyes. "My son was stealing from me and I didn't know where to turn. The clinic helped me stop him." I shook her hand, unable to speak. Catherine was gone, but she was still protecting people. I sold the house in Ballard in June for $2.8 million. The new owners were a young couple with a baby on the way. They loved the garden, the big windows, the breakfast nook, where Catherine used to read the Sunday paper. I didn't tell them what had happened there. With the proceeds, I bought my Capitol Hill apartment outright and donated a portion to the Catherine Mitchell Initiative. I also started volunteering 2 days a week at the Seattle Elder Rights Clinic, a legal aid office that helped seniors navigate fraud, abuse, and exploitation. I wasn't a lawyer, but I could listen. I could sit with frightened men and women who'd been betrayed by their own children, and I could tell them, "You're not alone. You can survive this." It didn't erase what Ryan had done, but it gave me a reason to get out of bed. On a Saturday morning in July, a letter arrived from Washington State Penitentiary. It was the third one Ryan had sent. I didn't open it. I wrote "Return to Sender" across the envelope and dropped it in the mailbox. Then I drove to Evergreen Cemetery. Catherine's grave was in a quiet corner beneath a maple tree. The headstone was simple, elegant: Catherine Ann Mitchell, 1962 to 2024, beloved wife, protector, light. I knelt in the grass and placed a bouquet of white roses by the stone. "Hey, love," I whispered. "It's been a while. You saved me, you know. You left me everything I needed to survive. And now I'm going to help other people. The way you helped me." I stayed for a long time, just sitting in the grass, feeling the sun on my face. That afternoon, I walked to Volunteer Park and sat on a bench overlooking the reservoir. A couple in their 70s strolled past, holding hands. The woman laughed at something her husband said, and he kissed her forehead. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in a year. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a photo I'd saved Catherine in our garden, her hands covered in dirt, her face bright with joy. I set it as my wallpaper. I didn't need justice anymore. I needed to live. For her. So here I am, sitting in my Capitol Hill apartment, looking at Catherine's photo on my phone screen. If you're listening to this family story, let me leave you with something I wish someone had told me years ago. Pay attention. Pay attention to the people you love, especially when they're silent. Catherine tried to protect me alone because she thought I couldn't handle the weight. I wish I'd seen her fear before it was too late. God gives us instincts for a reason. When something feels wrong in your family story, don't ignore it. Don't wait for proof. Talk. Ask. Listen. This dad revenge tale isn't one I'm proud of. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. But when your child crosses a line you never imagined they'd approach, you're left with an impossible choice: protect yourself or protect the lie. I chose survival. Some call that dad revenge. I call it staying alive long enough to honor the woman who saved me. Don't become me. Don't let silence poison your home. Don't assume your family story is safe just because everyone's smiling. Ryan smiled at Catherine's funeral while planning my end. Love your children, but keep your eyes open. If this dad revenge journey resonates with you, Or if you've faced betrayal in your own family story, share your thoughts below. Subscribe if you want more accounts like this one. Your support means everything. Thank you for walking this difficult path with me to the end. Disclaimer: this narrative contains